TalkPaymentRadio.com.
We give you a reason to come.
The world's greatest radio.
We give you a reason to stay.
Radio the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily those of TalkPaymentRadio.com, 3MR Production, its ownership, management, or staff.
We've got the power.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkPaymentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. Oh, my goodness. A lot has happened since the last time me and Mr. Fuller had a chance to talk, and we're going to get right to it. Joining me, of course, live from Washington, D.C., every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, is Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. How are you, sir?
I'm still learning.
Well, Mr. Fuller, we've got a lot to learn. A lot of stuff is either accelerating, happening. Days are flying by. I mean, I'm trying to just keep up with what's going on half the time. It's becoming more and more of a task. You can always tell, it seems like, Mr. Fuller, when there's a slight lull, you can always get a sense that that will be followed by a lot of elevated activity. It's almost as if when there's a lull, that's unacceptable or something like that. It just has, or maybe relative peace. It just seems that that's unacceptable. And of course, most of us are got our eyes on what happened this past week, just actually 2 or 3 days ago, up in the Boston area. Mr. Fuller, did you have any thoughts about that? But before you get to that, Mr. Fuller, and you can, after you make your announcement on your work, if you don't mind, go ahead and tag on into your thoughts on that. But first, Mr. Fuller, where can we get your 2 works?
Oh, you can get the basic book, the textbook for victims of racism, by putting into the computer the word producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And you can get the basic book and the additional word guide that recently came out a couple of years ago. That's an addition to the basic book. That's producejustice.com.
Okay. And the name of those 2 books are?
Well, it's called the Textbook Workbook for Thought, Speech, and/or Action for Victims of Racism. And then the second book is just an addition to the basic book, which is a word guide telling you how to use words, how not to use words, what questions to ask when people use certain words, and so that you can have a better understanding of what's being said. A lot is being missed in communications between people, and it causes breakdowns and misunderstandings because people, when they talk, they should make themselves very, very clear about what they're saying. And this would presumably be an antidote to a lot of problems that we have throughout the world, particularly when it comes to the use of the English language.
And that's where we are right now. Well, actually, when you think about it, these kinds of things, as bad as they are, and of course our condolences go out to any victims of any blast, wherever they may be, in any part of the world. We look at Central Africa and the Congo, where millions of people have been displaced. They're homeless, killed, and bodies mutilated, children's bodies mutilated in war. And you see it all over the place, from the areas known as South America to Africa to Asia, all over the place. You see this kinds of things happening on a regular basis, and yet no one ever talks about it. It's almost like, who cares, But sometimes when it happens in other areas of the world, that's all you hear. So, Mr. Fuller, let's look at this. Let's first of all break down this word, terror. Now, I believe that's in your word guide. Am I correct?
The word, what now?
Terror.
Oh, yes, C-A-R-R-E. Is that what you're saying?
No, terror. T-E.
Oh, terror.
T-E-R-R-O-R.
Yes, right. Terror.
Right. Terror, terrorism, terroristic, etc. Let's get into this word, because right now it's the word that's being flashed around the planet the most since the explosions took place in Boston, Massachusetts at the Boston Marathon. Mr. Fuller, let's start with the word terror. How do you, or how should we, look at this word, and what questions should be asked, and what statements should be made in regards to this word terror, and then terrorism or terroristic? Mr. Fuller.
It just means causing great fear. That's all it is, just causing great fear. And people are supposed to worship the making of great fear. We're in a society, in the system of racism, it's always been promoted. You walk by any mainline bookstore as far back as anybody can remember, and you see all types of books, glossy covers, real thick books, devoted to nothing but manufacturing great fear. Movies are made of all types that are designed to cause people to be afraid, even from a very young age. Some children's stories are all about producing fear, people producing fear in other people. Not so much something like strange creatures and whatnot, even though they do have that, coming from some alien world or something, but people right here on this planet. You're supposed to be made afraid. I mean, there are all types of what they call amusement parks, and they have rides and whatnot. Some of them that are designed to cause people to be thrilled by being made afraid at a very young age, and they will advertise them as such. Wild rides, they will call them. I mean, exciting, thrilling, and it's the same. You apply the same words, sometimes the word thrilling, to the word terror. You are thrilled by terror. You're thrilled by being made afraid. And so it's understandable that in a society that has generated this type of thinking, as far back as anybody can remember who's breathing now, then you have that type of manifestation. And people sometimes feign grief because everything is becoming artificial now in all areas of activity. Mm-hmm. Artificiality is glorified. Artificial in all areas of activity. Artificial economics, artificial education, artificial entertainment, labor, law, politics.
Artificial means false, not real. Is that right?
Yes. Artificial religion. I mean, religion is becoming more and more artificialized, you might call it. The artificialization of sex, and the artificialization of what they call war. War is not even war anymore. You can't tell what is war, when is war, when are people at war. Anyone who is mugged today or who is shot down in a robbery or carjacked, could you call that war? Could you call that terror? War is designed to, for the most part, not to destroy everyone, but to terrorize people into submission to one cause or another.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have that proliferation of all types of terror, and sometimes it's called war, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's called a war on terror, which makes no sense at all. That's a use of words that makes no sense to me.
Why?
How are you going to have war on terror? Terror? Who's terror? Is that a person's name? What do you mean, war on terror? If you're going to, you get rid of terror. You don't get rid of terror by war. I mean, that's just more terror, I would think, or more war.
So that's war on war.
Yeah, war on war, or maybe terror on war. I mean, what kind of sense does that make? But a few years ago, someone coined that term, and it's a lot of terms just being thrown around loosely. So I would say that peace would be the opposite of terror and or war. But you just don't compound it by saying war on terror, because are you going to cause terror by making war on terror? And that just makes a proliferation of terror, I guess. It depends on who's doing the talking. So this type of thing just comes full circle. And the more of it you put out there, the more of it you get. People should try to have what you might call a quality relationship. That's what I would call it. And get rid of these other arrangements where everyone is called a hero who is involved in some type of destruction. It just seems to be that's the way it is. And so it's going to be more of it until the people decide to do what Rodney King said and, raise that question and be serious about it for a change. Can we all get along? Can we? And answer that question seriously and not trivialize it.
Yeah.
It's an important question.
It's a very important question. 1-877-932-9766. If you have any thoughts, any questions, or any observations that you want to share, 1-877-932-9766. So, Mr. Fuller, what you're saying is people have to be made to stay in a state of fear under the conditions dominated by white supremacy. Why?
Because the white supremacists love it. That's their whole creed. They don't like peace. No, they like mistreatment of people. First of all, based on color. And that's their creed, and they think that's the way the world should be. All the time, 24/7, in all areas of activity, without let up. Let's dominate and mistreat people based on color, and that calls for, automatically, the spreading of terrorism. Terrorism is a standard for that. You have to make people afraid, have people in fear, have people trembling and straggling across the desert with their babies in their arms. And they're afraid of hunger.
Half starved, yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, half starved.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
Starve them out, drive them from one place to another, dislocate them, murder them, have them always in fear of being murdered, of being killed, and teach them to kill each other, and sit back and glory in that. Write articles about it, make movies about it. Don't let things die down for one moment.
Create the situation then pimp it.
Yes. And then when people look like they are not hostile toward you, make them hostile toward you. Generate some hatred of some type. And then go around and saying, well, we did this and that to them, and so now they're coming after us. So now we'll prepare for that. And let's just keep it going. Let's throw gasoline on the fire. Don't let it die down. Because in the creed of white supremacy, which is the dominant religious and political force on the planet, and the most successful religion and political force among the people of this planet, and has been ever since it's first started, and got a grip on people.
Mm-hmm.
No other religion other than the religion of white supremacy, no other political force other than the politics of white supremacy has been greater. Not Christianity, not Judaism, not Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, none of the isms, not any of the political forces.
You said the
Republican,
creed.
Democrat, conservative, liberal,
Right.
communist, capitalist. No political force is greater than the political force of the system of white supremacy.
Now, Mr. Fuller,
It's all about terrorism.
right. You were saying the creed of white supremacy is, and you were I wanted to hear what you're going to say on that. You were saying the creed of white supremacy?
Yes, well, it takes three forms. It's in the relationships between people, between all people. I call it the three T's.
Mm-hmm.
It's tacky, trashy, and terroristic. And these are the three forms that they basically take. Just look at how it works in all of the areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Everything is tacky, meaning the way that people interact with each other is artificial. Even all the way that people even say good morning to each other, the way people, when they pass each other on the street, everything is so artificial. You can almost feel the artificiality. Nothing is genuine. Even when they say that a bomb went off and everybody's supposed to be compassionate and the people break out the teddy bears and the candles.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of insincerity there.
And our hearts, and they use this statement, our hearts and prayers go out.
Yeah, our hearts, I mean, just cliche statements.
Cliche,
I mean, just come to the microphone and our hearts and prayers and I mean, I'm just so bent out of shape.
Yeah.
People are not bent out of shape or nothing. They're just for gearing up for the next big explosion and then running right toward it. I mean, and see how many people and making body counts. I mean, body bags and all like that. And on battlefronts, I mean, everything is about body counts and, how many people. I mean, it seems like wasn't enough people. Right. Wasn't enough people killed.
Collateral damage.
Yes, right. See, I mean, let's gear it up. I mean, got to get some more bodies lying around here. Dead bodies are beautiful under the system of white supremacy. That's what we want, particularly dead black bodies, dead brown bodies, yellow bodies, non-white peoples. That's who we want to see, dead bodies. I mean, that's thrilling. That's wonderful. That's the kind of world we want.
Mr. Fuller, you almost, it seems like you're describing something that the old folks would have called the devil. I mean, I mean, the way you describe white supremacists or how they function, I can't separate it from how a devil would function.
Well, they say that the devil likes evil, so would you call that evil? Just put it in the form of a question. I mean, where you worship the killing of people. People are pretty intricately put together. I mean, fingernails, toes, legs, arms, just the eye of one person. I mean, I can't make one of those eyes. The eye is a very small organism, just one person's eye. And it's very well put together.
Absolutely.
If you just look at an eye, and that eye can move, I mean, it gets a little relief, I mean, just by seconds, because eyes bat all the time, what you call batting your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that automatically without even thinking about it. That's a wonderful thing, if you really stop and think about it, how the eye gets a little relief, just every second or two. The eyes are always batting, and it does this, I guess, millions of times.
Millions of times.
Yes, and it gets a little relief, and in between, when it's open, you take in quite a view. Just one small eye can take in a lot, and then transfer what is taken in to the brain, and then the brain sorts all of that out. Go here, go there, do this, do that. I mean, watch out for that branch, that tree that's hanging low as you walk down the sidewalk. The eye picks that up and transfers that to the brain. But yet, the white supremacist philosophy is destroy all of that. That's nothing. I mean, make something artificial. You don't need a real eye. You don't really even need real sex. I mean, have artificial sex.
Wow.
I mean, that's the system of racism.
Mr. Fuller, stay right there. More to come on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I'm Brother Kahari. Stay right there. More to come on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This program is brought to you by ClaySpace, a passion for pottery, art for the soul. 614-449-8144. Considering a career in allied health, fitness, HVAC, business, or electronic systems? Then look into American School of Technology. AST features nationally accredited programs, small classes, hands-on training, and personalized attention. You could get your diploma or certificate within 12 months with career assistance available for graduates. What's more, AST offers financial aid for those who qualify. Visit our website at learnatast.com. That's learnatast.com. American School of Technology, 2100 Morse Road, Columbus. 614-472-4665. 614-4 School.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
Hi, I'm Joan London, and if you're worried about your parent or a loved one living alone like I was, and you want reliable senior care information, then call A Place for Mom, the nation's largest senior living referral service. You'll get free information on assisted living, Alzheimer's care, nursing homes, even important financial information.
They had obviously researched every place, not just given me names. Really? They found me a place for what she could afford, and it was magnificent.
We're now very confident that she's safe, and they just helped every step of the way, and I can't thank them enough.
So if you're struggling to find reliable senior living information, call A Place for Mom. This is a free service, and you can trust them to help you.
If you're struggling to find reliable senior living information for your mom or dad, then call or go online to get the free help you need during this turbulent time. Call now, 800-371-5898, 800-371-5898.
You gotta fight for your right to party.
If you like to party, and who doesn't, you know that sometimes stuff happens. Stuff like assaults, drugs, DUIs. Connie Goodell Newton understands. She's not here to judge anyone, just to provide the best legal representation possible. Facing criminal charges, Connie takes very special care handling her criminal cases and works hard to ensure that her clients receive the very best results possible. Do you have a record? Connie's very familiar with the new expanded expungement statute. Got warrants? Connie may be able to keep you out of jail. Connie also handles domestic relations and mediation cases. Call Connie Goodell Newton from the law firm of Petrakis and Goodell Newton at 307-9783. Connie welcomes clients from diverse communities, GLBT, African American, activists, students, and more. So party on. Just remember, if you get just one phone call, make it to Connie Goodell Newton at 307-9783 or online at fgnlegal.com.
This is Connie Goodell Newton, and I will fight for your right to party.
ClaySpace. How would you like to explore your creative side with clay in a relaxed and comfortable environment with your friends, family, or coworkers? Visit ClaySpace. Whether a group setting or privately, ClaySpace offers first-class instruction for beginners to the experienced. And what a way to celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, or just about any time you want to party. There's Free Throw Fridays, 6 to 9 p.m. Mention TalkTapeRadio.com for a free gift. ClaySpace. A passion for pottery, art for the soul. 831 South Front Street, 614-449-8144 or ClaySpace831.com.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
I'm Tammy Rager, host of The Now Age and numerologist to the stars. I've got your lucky number on Conversate in the AM on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9:11 a.m. Make sure you tune in for your lucky number. Punch in TalkTainmentRadio.com and click on Listen Live and listen for your lucky number.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week with Mr. Neely Fuller. We can be heard around the world and in your living room, on your phone, mobile phone, even at work, everywhere else we can be heard. This is The Compensatory Concept. I'm Brother Kahari. Also, and one of the things that we're dealing with is this definition of what terror is and what are the implications of terror, terrorism, terroristic. And Mr. Fuller, what's interesting about, of course, joining me is Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Fuller, and one other thing, Mr. Fuller can be heard if you don't catch us live. You can catch us in the evenings on Wednesday evenings. I believe it's at 10 o'clock is the replay there. Mr. Fuller can be heard at least 3 or 4 times on Wednesday, and you can catch us Wednesday evening if you don't get a chance to catch us live. The replay is Wednesday evening. I believe it's 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So it's in the evening, so you can hear it then. And then, of course, you can always go to the podcast. All you'd have to do is go to Talktainment Radio, click on programs, look up the compensatory concept, and boom, there you are. There are programs that are stored in there, what they call podcasts. Stored replays is what they really are. And you can get a chance to download and listen to shows that you've missed. We are running a little bit behind in our podcast, but we are in the process now reorganizing some things, and we should have those up and ready to go here momentarily. And so we're working diligently to get everything on tap and create even a more efficient and a better performing system. So just bear with us. We are in the process of making constructive changes that will benefit everyone. All right. You can call Mr. Fuller at 1-877-932-9766, 1-877-932-9766. Mr. Fuller, the most important thing, it seems to me, in all of this is as we stand back and look at what's happening and what happens all around the world, because it just doesn't happen here. It just gets all of the PR, but it happens everywhere in the world, violence and destruction and fear. What's the first things that we ought to be, before we even respond or make a statement to somebody else, what are the kinds of questions we ought to be asking in our own minds about what this is and how we should respond? Mr. Fuller.
Well, it starts with the basic question, like Mr. Rodney King said, and that is, we raise the question, can we get along? And if we're going to get along, what does that mean? You got 9 areas of activity here: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Can people get along in all of those areas of activity and then eliminate that last area, that thing called war and counter-war? Because if you keep embellishing that, then all the other areas of activity, the other 8 areas, are not going to matter at all. If you keep trying to pump up this whole concept of somebody's got to be fighting somebody. Let's stack up more and more guns. Let's get guns in more and more hands. Let's get more and more bombs in more and more hands. Let's teach all of the young people that there's a lot of glory. If you want to be glorified, don't try to find out how to cure somebody. That's not exciting. Don't be a doctor. Doctors, are being pushed to kick to the curb. Somebody who's in the business of trying to cure somebody, trying to study anatomy and whatnot, so that you can do more to make a healthy body and a healthy mind in a person. Oh, no, that's not to be promoted. Make that more and more difficult. In fact, if you're sending someone to medical school, use words that are you have to sit there and just try to figure out what is being said, because it's all such a strange language, and that gets in the way. You don't simplify. You don't say connect bone 1 to bone 2. You give it some fancy name or some fancy word in all languages that's going to be about 8 blocks long, and you spend about 15 weeks trying to figure out just how to pronounce the word before you can even operate on someone. That needs to be examined. Why can't medicine be simplified in a language that many, many people can learn? How to heal people, what to look for when bodies are ailing and et cetera, rather than make it difficult. They make it real easy to find out how to shoot a rifle. In fact, they train you laboriously. They have no problem doing that. In fact, they come and get people and round them up from village to village and take them off somewhere and train them how to do what? How to blow up a bridge full of people, refugees trying to get across a bridge, how to destroy them, watch them fall into the water with their children and whatnot. They spend a lot of time doing that. They'll spend a lot of time taking someone who is barefoot and give him a rifle or her a rifle and spend hour after hour after hour firing at targets that later become people and destroying people and destroying things that have been built laboriously and things that are intricately put together, destroy them in just a matter of a few minutes and glorify the people who are doing the destroying. No one should be glorified for being in the business of destroying people and destroying things that people need, burning fields of wheat and destroying fields of rice so that people cannot get there and use those things that people have put in a lot of labor on and whatnot. All of this is glorified in the system of white supremacy because they are the ones in this stage of history who are doing more of it than anybody on the planet because they are the smartest and most powerful people. But they are taking that old ancient thing. I don't think they invented it. I mean, people were acting that way before the advent of white supremacy, but they have just attached to it, glorified it more so, played it up, and carried it on in a more modern sense and in a more sophisticated way than anybody ever has.
Mm-hmm.
And that should be replaced with a better system. That system would be a system of justice,
Mr. Fuller,
system of peace.
There are some people who now believe that this concept of white supremacy domination is about to come to an end. They point to Brazil, they point to China, they point to India, and they point to Russia. And they say this new Brazil, Russia, India, China coalition is about to change the world, and no longer will this kind of construct or this kind of system dominate the world. That is just about at the end. So, Mr. Fuller, do you have any hope that this way of thinking and this way of doing is just about ready to come to an end?
Well, it's not just a matter of getting rid of the system of white supremacy. It's a matter of what you replace it with. And you don't want to replace it with the same type of way that they go about doing things, which is this tackiness and this trashiness and this terroristic way of doing things, the 3 T's, rather than have a quality relationship. And we don't know what that is yet because we've never had it. The people of this planet have never enjoyed what I call in capital letters, the quality relationship, so that every time a person approaches another person, it's always a quality relationship. No cursing, no fuming, no people being hostile, everyone being helpful to everyone else, which is the way it should have been in the first place. But they are just embellishing this thing and making it worse and just basking in it. And it's been around so long that everybody should be tired of it by now. Everybody should be tired of it and say, let's try something else. Do you have to run this wonderful planet that way? And the answer is no. And they have all the technology that is available that you need to make everything the way that it ought to be right now. That's not anything in the future. You can do this overnight if you have the will to do so. But the white supremacists just want to carry on that old system of royalism based on destroying people based on color. And then even after that, they'll say, well, if you're not going to do it on the basis of color, do it on some other basis. That's their mentality, and they'll spread it to everyone else, including all the non-white people in the world who are strutting around with rifles in their hands and whatnot. That's not the way to even greet people when people come to visit. What do they always have? A military parade. You shouldn't have a military parade anytime, anywhere on the planet for any reason. That should be stopped. No one should strut soldiers around on a main avenue, people with rifles. Stop and think about it. People with guns coming down a main street for any reason. This crowd in the street and people on both sides of the street cheering them on and waving flags and calling them heroes. Now, I'm not saying that taking up a rifle at some point and killing someone is not a necessity, but you never, ever, ever, ever glorify a person for killing someone. That's a shameful act. And the person who is even doing it should say, no, don't glorify me. I had to kill someone in self-defense. But there's nothing to be praised. And don't hang any medals on my chest or anything like that. That's shameful. We all have a tragic arrangement. That's what we have on this planet, among all peoples, everywhere. That's what I call it, a tragic arrangement. The 3 T's. Tacky, that's at very best, even when people are called themselves getting along in peace. You don't have peace anywhere on this planet. But even when people say that they are peaceful and that they have goodwill, it's artificial. All of this so-called goodwill that people have and whatnot, and burning incense and lighting candles and whatnot, and coming and visiting people from house to house, and they say, we're coming in goodwill, we're coming in peace. This is artificial, and people know it. You can see all through that. People come there to criticize you. When people even now, when they say, my friends, what's a friend? You can't have a friend on this planet with this type of arrangement.
Especially the way
it's all very tacky.
Especially the way they're doing it with this Facebook thing. It really points up to what you're saying about this artificialization. How are you going to be friends with someone you've never even seen in your whole life? And then you call them friends and family.
Yes, and so-called friendship, people will gather, at a party and whatnot, and they will eat and drink and whatnot. And they say, these are all my friends. And then they'll turn right around and say, well, me and my friend are not speaking. What is that? I've been doing that too long. All that artificiality. Something's got to be real at some point.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a real world that's been provided by a creator of this world with everything that it takes to take care of everybody in big time on this planet. It's already here. You don't have to add anything. It's already here. But these arrangements that we have, this tragic arrangement, I put it in the capital letters, the tragic arrangement is the arrangement that all of the people on this planet right now have with each other. It's tragic. Every piece of it is tragic in the form of the 3 T's. Tacky. Tacky is as good as it gets. And when you try to improve on that tackiness, you can even see it at a party. It goes from tacky to trashy. And then, if you try to improve on the trashiness, it goes to terroristic. This is why, even when people have what we call a friendly party, we're going to have a party next Saturday evening. So it starts out tacky because everything is so artificial. Everybody's acting like they like each other and can't stand each other, picking at each other. And then you try to improve on that, and it turns out to be trashy about 2 o'clock in the morning. And then about 3 o'clock, you got yellow tape all over the neighborhood because it's gone from that to terroristic.
To the pow.
Somebody starts fighting in the parking lot, and then you have the pop of the 9mm pistol.
Mm-hmm.
Over and over and over again. It seems like we would just stop it and just say, no more of this. No more of this. And we can do that overnight. We can do it instantly. Doesn't take a long time. Just make up your mind. We're not going to do this no more. Period.
Wow. We've got more to cover on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. By the way, you can always catch Mr. Fuller's podcast. You can go to talktainmentradio.com. click programs, put in the compensatory concept, and there you have it. Mr. Fuller is here live every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've got a lot more to cover. Stay right there. More to come on the compensatory concept, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This program is brought to you by ClaySpace, a passion for pottery, art for the soul. 614-449-8144 or clayspace831.com. Considering a career in allied health, fitness, HVAC, business, or electronic systems? Then look into American School of Technology. AST features nationally accredited programs, small classes, hands-on training, and personalized attention. You could get your diploma or certificate within 12 months with career assistance available for graduates. What's more, AST offers financial aid for those who qualify. Visit our website at learnatast.com. That's learnatast.com. American School of Technology, 2100 Morse Road, Columbus. 614-472-4665. 614-4-SCHOOL.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
You gotta fight for your right to
If you like to party, and who doesn't, you know that sometimes stuff happens. Stuff like assaults, drugs, DUIs. Connie Goodell Newton understands. She's not here to judge anyone, just to provide the best legal representation possible. Facing criminal charges, Connie takes very special care handling her criminal cases and works hard to ensure that her clients receive the very best results possible. Do you have a record? Connie's very familiar with the new expanded expungement statute. Got warrants? Connie may be able to keep you out of jail. Connie also handles domestic relations and mediation cases. Call Connie Goodell Newton from the law firm of Petrakis and Goodell Newton at 307-9783. Connie welcomes clients from diverse communities, GLBT, African American, activists, students, and more. So party on. Just remember, if you get just one phone call, make it to Connie Goodell Newton at 307-9783 or online at fgnlegal.com.
This is Connie Goodell Newton, and I will fight for your right to party.
ClaySpace. How would you like to explore your creative side with clay in a relaxed and comfortable environment with your friends, family, or coworkers? Visit ClaySpace. Whether a group setting or privately, ClaySpace offers first-class instruction for beginners to the experienced. And what a way to celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, or just about any time you want to party. There's Free Throw Friday, 6 to 9 p.m. Mention TalkTapeRadio.com for a free gift. ClaySpace. A passion for pottery, art for the soul. 831 South Front Street, 614-449-8144 or clayspace831.com.
Are there hidden sex words that impact your brain? Are there secret images and symbols that manipulate and control your child's mind and behavior? Why are so many youth unable to resist the destructive sexual messages beamed into their brain without them knowing they are being manipulated? Do you want answers? Get the new book, Sex Code War by Kahari and Ahara, coming soon.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
I'm Tammy Rager, host of The Now Age and numerologist to the stars. I've got your lucky numbers on Conversate the AM on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9:11 a.m. Make sure you tune in for your lucky number. Punch in TalkTainmentRadio.com and click on Listen Live and listen for your lucky number.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard, the world's greatest radio. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week with Mr. Fuller. You can catch us live at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Mr. Fuller, of course, is live from Washington, D.C., and you can catch him, and you can also talk to Mr. Fuller at 1-877-932-9766, 1-877-932-9766. As we are talking about this word terror, what does this mean? How should you think about it? When you hear this language, what should you respond? Mr. Fuller, in your word guide, in your book on your word guide, what is it that you say about terror that we need to pay specific attention to?
It's just causing great fear. That's all. But under the system of white supremacy, they do the categorizing. They will say when something is terror. In this recent incident, either directly or indirectly, the white supremacists were saying, well, it may have been an act of terror, and it may not have been. And even they will divide it into two categories, if I understand it correctly. They will say that it's foreign terrorism, or it might be domestic terrorism. Now, stop and think about those terms. If you are the person who is getting your leg blown off, does that matter to you? Whether it's so-called domestic, and what do you mean by domestic? Does it feel any different when you get your leg blown off from someone who is domesticated or someone who is foreign? Do you really care? Harm is being done. Your leg is gone, or your eye's been put out. Domestic or foreign? By whom? Which was it? And should it make a difference? I say it shouldn't. It's all the same. Your eye is gone by someone who deliberately put out your eye. Now deal with it like that. We are in a universe. Everything is connected, even though people will try to act like it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And under the system of white supremacy, they will chop everything up, the little boxes, because that's how they control what is going on. And that's how they want to continue to control what is going on. And they do it by manipulating language. They will call one thing terrorism, and they'll just call another, depends on the circumstances, well, an act of defiance, or an act of jealousy, or an act of something else. They'll just give any kind of label to it that they think will work at the time, so that they can do what? They can control the carnage in a way that will help to do what? To prop up the system of racism. That's what, since they are the engineers of all of it, whether you call it foreign or domestic. They are the cause of all of it. Why? Because they are the smartest and most powerful people on the planet. And so one way or another, they are the genesis, the beginning and the end, of anything that's happening that shouldn't be happening and should be blamed for it. This latest act, if any non-white people were involved, either directly or indirectly, that includes if non-white people were the people who did the act in Boston. The white supremacists are to blame because they set it up. Why? Because they are the masters of all things, not some. They manipulate all of the people on the planet, one way or another. I'm not saying all white people. I'm saying those white people who have chosen to be white supremacists, which means dominate and mistreat people based on color. That's what a white supremacist is. They are to blame for all of this carnage anywhere on the planet 24/7. Why? Because they are the smartest and most powerful people on the planet, and they can stop it anytime they want to and have everybody walking around hugging everybody if that's what they would desire, because they have made themselves smart over many, 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 many generations. Because you have to be smart if you are just you might say, some people say a minority of people in numbers, but you control the majority of the people on the planet in all areas of activity 24/7. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And when you have the power to manipulate people's activities, their minds, how they think, their comings and goings. And you have that kind of power, you have to be a smart person. You cannot be dumb. You cannot be ignorant and pull that off over a period of time. See, it's not like it just happens for a short period of time, like 15 or 20 minutes or 15 or 20 days or months or years. But when you do this for hundreds of years and you're able to sustain it, you have to be smart to do that. I didn't say wise. I didn't say good. I said you have to be smart enough to pull it off. You can be evil and still be smart. In fact, if you're going to be evil for a long period of time over a whole bunch of people, you'd better be smart.
Let me, Mr. Fuller, let me ask you this. I take it then that you're not sold on the notion of this change in the supremacy thing through China. You don't, because I remember I was talking to some people and I said, I heard that about this organization is called OPEC about 20 years ago. I heard that about Japan about 25 years ago. And now I hear it's always something coming up that's going to, like you said, create fear, create worry, keep attention, a state of mind. It just change is going to come. This is going to be this way, and this is going to be that way. 35 or 40 years out, a projection. So you're not buying into this notion that the new way is going to go to China. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Now, I hear this thing about post-racial world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any signs of that. I see signs of a greatly sophisticated refinement of the system of white supremacy. When I look and see Chinese soldiers, people who are labeled as Chinese, and they are also considered to be non-white by the white supremacists, and they're strutting with their rifles and whatnot, I say, where did all this come from originally? Where did this idea? They are strutting like I've seen the white supremacists strut. They might have gotten the idea from the white supremacists, which means the white supremacists know just about how far that will go, too. That strutting down the street with rifles and tanks and missiles on platforms and all like that. The white supremacists look at that and say, not only been there, done that, but have taught you how to do it, which means if I taught you how to do it, I got something better than what you got. Have you figured that out, Mr. Yellow Man?
Okay, Mr. Fuller. We've got someone who wants to make a comment. Yes, go ahead, caller.
Yes, good morning. I really appreciate the discussion, and I really appreciate Mr. Fuller.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like to add in terms of this question about if I'm not mistaken, you're talking about the BRICS.
Yes.
And the S in that
that's
be,
Brazil, Russia, India, and China coalition. Yes.
Right, but you put the S on it. They have
South Africa. Yeah, South Africa.
Is
supposedly, yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was listening to a discussion last week or week before last week, and there was this European, well, I don't know if I want to say European, let me just say he was a white man. I don't know if he was a white supremacist, but he was a white man, and he very angrily said, well, you all are talking about these BRICS, but this is something that was set up by Goldman Sachs.
That's right.
That's not going to go anywhere. And this was his attitude. He was rather angry about the discussion about how the power of the BRICS or what the BRICS could be doing. But he came in and, in a sense, almost just squashed it with big boot type of verbal behavior. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And Mr. Fuller, thank you so much for maintaining and helping us to see through all of this. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, that could be. Now, I'm not familiar with the details of what she's talking about.
What she's talking about is how this so-called BRICS, and she's right, China made a decision to bring in South Africa. They petitioned for it. But South Africa, the South African economy, is clearly not controlled by black people. I don't care which way you look at it. They don't control it at all. Never did. So bringing in South Africa means what? I mean, I don't, but it's this coalition of nations, which everyone is saying will be the group that replaces the United States and the European groups, and that they would take over power in the next 37 to 40 years. But as I said before, we heard that about OPEC, we heard that about Japan, and yet we still see the same structural arrangement. So that's what she's talking about. And she was saying that someone from Goldman Sachs set up this whole concept and pushed it forward. And I remember reading that. So, Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
Well, I wouldn't use those terms according to the code. I just call it the system of white supremacy. There's only one nation on this planet, just one. It's not a lot of nations. There's no such thing as a South Africa, a Brazil. These are just labels that the white supremacists use. I don't say they invented the labels. The people sometimes call themselves by different tribes and all like that. But the white supremacists will use these labels and say, well, this is Brazil, this is South Africa, this is OPEC, if they're talking about an organization, this is Goldman Sachs. They'll say anything. A white supremacist will use any kind of label and put that label out front. But behind the scenes, it's always a white person who believes in the system of white supremacy. And if it's got any power to it at all, that's where the power is. Each and every time, without exception, it's always them. They're always the usual suspects. But they'll call themselves conservatives, liberals. They will, even when people call themselves an organization like Goldman Sachs, I mean, and there were people who actually have these names. But behind the scenes, even unbeknownst to the people who are at so-called Goldman Sachs, whatever that is, if that's an office or a group of people sitting around a table, behind the scenes, the white supremacists will look at that and say, they can call themselves anything they want to, but I'm going to control their actions either directly or indirectly, because we control everybody's actions, either directly or indirectly. And we control it in such a way that at the end of the day, it's going to be the domination and the mistreatment of non-white people. I don't care what you set up. Even if black people, if Mr. Nelson Mandela and company, say, well, we want this and we want that. Once they get it halfway set up, the white supremacists have always taken a look at it, examine what the ingredients are in it, and say, now, this is where we make our move to control what they are going to do, unbeknownst to them. Most likely, unbeknownst to them, we are going to control what they are planning on doing, so that we'll make it look like they're in control, because they'll think they're in control, when we'll be manipulating all of the outer edges of it, so that it always works in such a way that it supports the system of white supremacy, because we don't allow anything to happen on our planet that does not support the system of white supremacy. That's what white supremacy means. Nothing happens unless it's going to be in support of our system, either directly or indirectly, no matter who starts it, no matter what their intentions are, no matter what religion you might have. You better believe if it's going to do damage to the system of white supremacy, the white supremacists are going to do damage to you.
Well, Mr. Fuller, looks like we got a lot to think about and a lot to deal with. In 30 seconds, Mr. Fuller, any closing comments?
Well, we need to replace the system as best we can as individuals by improving our individual relationships with people day to day in all areas of activity. And one way that the black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere, and I always keep reiterating this, is that don't contact anyone, not on your cell phone or anything else, unless you have something constructive to say or some constructive plan in mind. And underline the word constructive. Make sure that it's going to have a constructive result. And always ask yourself, starting with every day, every minute of the day, what do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? How do I plan to do it? And what do I expect the constructive result to be?
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Radio, the way it should be heard.